10 tips and tricks that you need to know to improve at Quidditch Champions. Hi guys, it's Eve. Welcome back to my channel. Quidditch Champions has very recently been released. It's literally been out a couple of days, came out Tuesday the 3rd of September. I have been playing it literally every day since because I'm really enjoying it, but it is a difficult game. It's becoming a very competitive game. I think it's going to continue to do so, and especially as the game has been out for longer and as it continues to be out for longer and longer, you're going to start to see people getting amazing at the game, and so it's actually going to get even more tricky to win, especially in multiplayer. This is something that I have been starting to encounter, but there are some things that I've realised really help and can help you improve at the game, and just some key little tips and tricks that remove maybe some of the mistakes or some of the issues that you're having with the game at the minute. So in this video, I'm going to be going through 10 tips and tricks that I wish I knew before starting Quidditch Champions, and I wish I knew sooner, that have really helped me to improve my performance in Quidditch Champions. And it's helping me to very slowly close that gap between some of the really good players on there and just get better at the game. If you're new here, guys, don't forget to subscribe. I do loads of videos, short and long form, on Harry Potter, on all things fantasy. And I've got loads more content coming out on Quidditch Champions, so make sure you're following it so you don't miss it. So tip number 1, make use of the tutorial. Don't rush it. Definitely don't skip it, because the tutorial is a really great opportunity to just really practice and get used to the controls, because there are a lot of controls, especially because there are so many different roles. You can play as Chaser, Beater, Seeker and Keeper. Each of these roles, whilst there are some controls and moves that overlap, for example, Throw Quaffle is always the same for Chaser, for Keeper. Quite a few of the different roles have tackle, so they all move in the same way using the L stick, but there are some differences with each. For example, the fact that as you're a keeper as well, you can throw the ball, but you can also kick a player, kick the ball, you can launch the Playcaller cards. As a Seeker, you can bump the other Seeker, and that requires a different set of controls to what a usual tackle does. Beater, that you can press triangle to summon the bludger, but then you need to press triangle again to give it a boost. There's a lot to remember, and even though the controls aren't complicated, it is just more the sense of how many there are, getting used to that switching between positions and what the difference is. And that tutorial at the start, the Burrow Cup, is really good for just repeat it. When you're doing it for the first time, you can ask, can you show me it again? Which is what I did. I think I asked for each one for Ginny to talk me through it twice. But you can always go back to it. Even once you finished it, if you're a little bit into the game now, and if you're finding that you keep maybe forgetting some of the controls, just pop back to the Burrow Cup in the campaign mode. Pick whichever role it is that you're struggling more with, and you'll see on that screen there's the option to do practice match, learn, so you can remind yourself of those controls, rejig your memory. I think making use of that tutorial is really important. Tip number 2, practice each role in real scenarios. So this sort of links the previous one in the sense of just practicing basically. But what I mean within real scenarios is there is a practice mode. I personally don't love practice mode. I've actually had some issues with it where it'll only let me practice as a Chaser, but I think that might be a me issue, so I don't know. But I actually have found it being really useful to practice and really try and hone my skills for each position by playing as basically just that position in a real scenario, i.e. multiplayer. So multiplayer, when you're playing against real people, it's an actual match. It's what you're actually going to encounter when you're playing. It's the higher stakes, it's everything. And what I will do, because when you're playing in multiplayer, you can play as 2 positions, Chaser and then either Keeper, Seeker or Beater. What I did at the start was I did a multiplayer game where I would choose one of the roles and I would only play for the whole game as the other role, so the non-Chaser role. So for example, I think the first one I did was I played as Chaser and Keeper, and then I only played as a Keeper the whole game. I just stayed by the goal. I never switched to my Chaser. Even I probably could have, it would have probably been fine, and I'd have still been able to practice as a Keeper even if I'd have switched to Chaser. But just to really practice when there's real people that I'm playing against. It's not just a bot that can, it just goes for one goal and doesn't really trick you that well. Especially for the Keeper one, you need to play against real people, because real people know you need to be clever. You can go right up to the Quidditch hoop to score. You can change really quickly, whereas when you're playing with bots, it does less of that. So I found it really useful to basically practice each role in multiplayer and just play as that role, and it really helped me to get better at that role. Not worrying about the switching between different positions, because that's the one thing. Campaign mode is also a great place to obviously practice, but you're on your own and you have to switch to every position, so it can be quite overwhelming. So playing multiplayer where you only have to play as two, it's more overwhelming in the sense you've got other real people are playing against, and they can be very good, and it can be like, oh my god, I don't know what I'm doing. But because it's only two positions you're switching between, it can be a little bit more manageable. And once I did Keeper and Chaser, I then did a game of multiplayer where I was Keeper and Beater, and I just played as Beater the entire round. Well, with Chaser and Seeker, I did the same, but you can only actually switch to Seeker once the snitch is out. So I basically played as a Chaser, and then as soon as the snitch was out, I switched to Seeker because I physically couldn't have done so before. I found that really helpful, not worrying about having to switch around, just practicing getting the skills for that specific role better. Tip number 3 is use those skill points. Now, the reason I say I probably took a little bit too long to realise that there were skill points and actually to use them and to use them effectively. But as soon as you see that you've won skill points, go to your team and start distributing them. Because even if you place one and change your mind, it's so easy, which I really like about the game, it's so easy to remove the skill point and put it elsewhere. It's not like once you've spent it, it's gone. You can move them all around, redistribute them however you want. In terms of where to place the skill points, obviously at the start when you only have one or two, it can be difficult to choose, and it is entirely up to you and what position you prefer playing as, what you struggle with. But what you struggle with, I would really recommend you sort of thinking about. So I, at the start, put a lot of I think the first skill point I placed was with my Keeper. And I think it was in one of the first ones because I was like, okay, if I can stop goals getting in more, that's obviously going to help stop them scoring. But I remember putting a skill point on my Keeper first because like I'm not good at being a keeper, so maybe some skill points will help. Just help me a little bit more. And then I found I was really enjoying playing as a Seeker, but I was finding it was taking ages to catch the snitch. Not always being, beaten by my opponent, but I was just finding it was taking a long time and just getting quite like tedious. I actually put a load of skill points then on my Seeker and on the seeking skills sort of tab, and that has actually helped a lot because those points are really good because it means you can basically catch a snitch quicker. In Quidditch Champions it's different now, where this catching the snitch doesn't always end the game unless you get to 100 points, but you get a good amount of points from it. Not 150, but still a good amount of points, and also if you're falling behind, catching the snitch can really make that difference. I actually liked playing as a Seeker, and I could see that as a role that I would switch to a lot, so I really put a lot of skill points there. The skill points I think I've put the least behind is Beater, because I now find I don't play as much as a Beater because I just don't think I'm as good as it. Especially in career mode when there's so much other stuff going on, I just don't ever think about going to the Beater. So I'm like, well, either I'm trying to score, trying to save the goal, or trying to get the snitch. I never think, or I think I get a bit overwhelmed. By the time I switch to Beater and think who I'm going to hit with, I don't need to hit them anymore. They've not got the ball or something. So that's the one that I've put the least in. But you might find that you really like playing as a Beater, and maybe you are doing a lot of tackling and you want a bit of help with that, so you decide to put a lot of skill points in tackling. Just really use those skill points to your advantage. And I would recommend either putting them on a position you like playing but maybe have an element that you struggle with, so you can help it to give you a little boost there, or just a role that you think is quite important. Also remember, like, even if you don't play as that, the bot player in campaign mode, that will, I think, still get that boost. So I definitely do recommend putting someone on the Seeker, even if you don't love using the Seeker. If you can, I think one of the first ones is that the meter fills a bit quicker. I would highly recommend putting one on that because it just helps make catching a snitch that bit quicker. Make use of those skill points. Think about your game style, what you like playing as and what you struggle, and sort of distribute them amongst that. Now, tip 4 is knowing when to switch to the Beater role. So this is something I just touched upon about how I found that I'm really not switching to the Beater role that much, especially in campaign mode, because there is so much going on. It's just you can switch between any of the positions, which is great. But I'm either trying to score, save the goal, or catch the snitch. And as I was just saying, I switched to Beater. As soon as I've summoned the bludger, which takes ages, figured out who I need to throw it at, and then thrown it, half the time they've then passed on the ball, they don't need it anymore, or the other team have just scored, or they very easily dodge it. But I have found what works and how you can utilise the Beater position well and knowing when to switch to it. What I would suggest, it's best to switch to Beater when your team are trying to score. Even if you've just been past the quaffle as a chaser or something, I would still recommend then switching to your Beater, summoning your bludger and aiming for the keeper. Because if you can even just stun the keeper when your team are close to scoring, obviously that's going to help. They're not going to be able to move in time or see where the ball's going so you can score. So that's one of the most useful uses of the beater. When your team have the ball and you think you're going to score, switch to the beater, throw the bludger at the keeper. Try and do it in good time so you have time to summon the bludger if the beater doesn't already have the bludger, because you've got to wait for the bar to refill and everything. But that is a really good use of the beater. And then as soon as either you've scored, not scored, whatever, you can then switch back to chaser, help to set up another goal. So you might find you're doing a lot of setups of goals rather than scoring them, but you'll probably find that more goals for your team are scored overall if you can successfully stun the keeper or even eliminate them. I don't find it that useful targeting chasers, because usually, as I sort of touched on before, as soon as I've seen, right, they have the ball, let me summon the bludger, let me target them, they've then passed it or scored. The other extremely useful use of the beater, and the best person to target, is the opposing team's seeker. This, I think, is the main time you should use your beater position. If you don't want to play it early on in the game and just play as a chase the whole time, when you see snitch appearing or snitch has been found, switch to your beater and absolutely go for that opponent's seeker, because you want your seeker to catch a snitch. Beater on the opposing team is going to be aiming for your seeker, so you need to aim for theirs. And it does make a difference. Literally played last night and aimed for the opposing team's seeker. The opposing seeker was winning and going to catch the snitch. Successfully stunned them, and then our seeker caught the snitch. So it really does make a difference. And even if they do dodge it, it still puts them off track, because if they have to spin, they might then miss one of the snitch rings and, then lose a bit of time. It gives your seeker that time to catch up and to get the snitch. So 100%, I'd say that's probably one of the most full uses of the beater, is to switch to it when the snitch is out and target the opposing team's seeker. Now, tip 5 is about how to successfully dodge a bludger. And that might seem like, well, Eve, it's obvious, it tells us you press L1, but there is a bit of a skill to it, and it's not always super clear, and it's something I actually didn't, it took me a little while to get used to. I've just started playing with my boyfriend and he had the same. When it says bludger approaching, don't press L1 straight away. When it says bludger approaching, you'll see the lines either side start to fill up. Wait until they get to the middle and it actually says L1. Once L1 appears on that little sort of red bar, then press L1, and only then. Obviously, if you press it too late, it's going to hit you. But if you press it too soon, it will also hit you, because you've dodged too soon, then you get it right and then it hits you. You don't have time to dodge again. So only dodge once you see L1 appear in that red bar. Tip number 6, when you're trying to score, when you're playing as a chaser, make sudden changes. Aim for one goal and then suddenly switch. And actually, something I found, go as close to the hoop as you can. I found that I basically go into the hoop and throw it. When you play as a keeper, when you think, you can't, if it's not in your direct periphery, you can't actually see what's going on. If they're too close, it's really hard to tell where they are and everything, especially when they end up going behind you. You can't score from behind, so I'm not saying to do that, but go really close. Obviously, the further away you do it, it can be good if you get a good enough boost and have a good throw. You can get good speed and get the quaffle in. But if you go too far away, the keeper can see you lovely and clearly, can see where the ball's going and save it. So I would recommend actually going quite close. I know it can be quite scary. And there is the chance that if it's a good keeper, they might tackle you, kick you, get the ball off you. But if you play it well, go quite close to the hoops and then try and make quite a sudden change to score. The one you can always guarantee they won't save is if you're aiming for one side, so you've got the 3 hoops, middle, left, right. If you're aiming for the left one and then you manage to suddenly change to the right one, obviously that's going to be the probably best rate of success, because it's harder for the keeper to move that far across. But I get that can be difficult, so that can't always be done. I would just say try and score quite close to the hoop and just really make sure you're making sort of sudden movements, sharp changes. But obviously, if you can help your chasers out as your beater and take out the keeper, even better. Linked to this, when you're playing as a keeper, try and stay centre as much as possible, because as I was just saying, the hardest move to do is the left from right, right to left. So if the chaser is doing what you're now going to do from after reading this video about sort of going from one side to the other, making those quick changes. If you're all the way over one side, you're not going to be able to move over quick enough. So when you're playing as a keeper, try as much as you can to stay in that centre position. It's so much easier to move. You can use that really handy L1 move where you do L1 in direction, go up, left, right. So staying centre is just going to help you. You can sort of stay a bit calmer there, just observe everything, and I would try and avoid moving too much before they're basically about to score, because if you go one way and then they can very easily be like, well, you've gone over there, I'm going to go over here then. So try and stay centre as much as you can. Doing a little bit of movement's actually okay if you want to try and put them off, and that's something I think I need to do more. Actually being like, right, I'm going to really own one goal to try and put them off that and then make some sudden movements. Like, there is that, but I have found that it's the calmest and most sort of manageable when staying centre and then just watching the chaser and then making the sort of move based on where you think they're aiming towards. Tip number 8, as a keeper, make use of those Playcaller Rings. This is something that I have not been doing anywhere near enough. I just keep forgetting about it, and when I do remember, it does make a difference. These rings are the ones that you can place as a keeper, and then they're basically rings that will boost chasers' energy. So literally you could place them, switch to a chaser, and yourself then go through them all to give you a boost. And it is really helpful because when you've got a quaffle, your speed is reduced. So if you're a chaser holding the quaffle, you're so close to think, right, I can score, or I've not got anyone near me to pass, but damn, I've got, 2 opposing players right on me, they might tackle me, whatever. If there's those rings, getting that boost makes such a difference. It gives you that speed up so you can get away from them, you can get close to the goal. It's so helpful. And when I'm playing as a keeper, I keep forgetting to place them, and I realise how much of a difference it makes. So try and remember to place those Playcaller Rings. Tip number 9, choose your brooms carefully and well. So in the same way that you're going to place your skill points to sort of either help you with your skills or what you're struggling with, do the same with the brooms. Really pay attention to what their stats are. Don't forget to upgrade them, because I know it can be difficult. Like, no, I'm not going to upgrade that because it costs moon shards. But you've got those moon shards for a reason. They're the only things the moon shards can be used for. I wouldn't worry about saving them. Just spend them. You'll earn more. Just get those brooms upgraded from a nice early stage to give you that help, that boost, that support. You can customise each of the roles. So customise each of them and make sure they have a broom according to them. I found for my chaser, I wanted one with quite a high speed and agility over durability, because I was like, well, they want to be fast because they're trying to get from one end of the pitch to the other. And I want them to be agile because you need to be moving out the way for if people are trying to tackle you. Durability I worried less about, because I was like, well, there's 3 chasers, so if one goes down, I've still got 2 other chasers to use. Whereas keeper, I majorly wanted to make sure I had a broom with very good durability, because like, well, if my keeper gets knocked off and gets eliminated, there's then an open goal for the other team to score in. So for the keeper, I prioritise brooms with a high durability, and you can preview the upgrades as well, which is really good. So you can look at all the brooms you currently have unlocked and see, well, if I spend this on that, what will increase? So I made sure for my keeper, I looked at them, figured out which one would be best to give my keeper the best durability. Didn't care about speed for keeper, because I personally don't think you really need that. It's durability and agility. So really have a look at that. Remember, it's not necessarily that one broom, even if you put all upgrades on one broom, that doesn't mean everyone should necessarily have that broom. There might be a less upgraded one that's still a better fit for one of the roles, and that you should maybe invest some moon shards into. You can play around with it as well. You might decide you want to test one broom for your beta, decide actually I don't need that much speed, but I keep getting hit or knocked off or whatever, so I actually now want to try a broom that's got better durability. So you can play around with it and make use of it. It's not just once you've selected one broom, that's it. You can change. So make use of that. And tip number 10 is, when you're playing as a chaser, pass the quaffle. I know when you have the ball, it can get quite overwhelming. You can get quite scared, like, right, I just need to just fly as fast as I can to the other side of the pitch and get the quaffle in. And also sometimes it's because you want to get the goal. Sometimes as well, like you might see that someone's asking to get the ball but get a bit overwhelmed. I have that sometimes where I'm like, I want to pass, but what if the team intercept? Pass the ball. Because if you're holding the quaffles, your like boost runs out and then you move really slowly. And that is the perfect opportunity for someone on the other team to tackle you, get the ball off you quite easily. If you're basically standing still, which is what happens, you're there for them to just take the ball. So pass the ball, and then you can literally just pass between each other, and then you all keep that boost. You don't get that like slow down from carrying the quaffle as much, and then your team can get the goal. You will definitely find that you get more goals if you pass the ball a lot than if you was just get the ball and just try and fly all the way to the other end, because your speed won't last that well at all, and another chaser from the opposing team will tackle you. So in the same way, make sure that when you don't have the ball but are a chaser, make sure you're available for a pass. Set yourself up nicely, get closer to the goals you need to score in, not too far away, because if you're too far, they can't pass to you, and call for a pass. Set it up nicely. So make sure that you are passing, that you are making yourself available for passes. Don't hog the ball, whether that's out of just wanting to get the goal, which I do completely understand. It's so satisfying when you score, so I understand that. Or whether it's out of you're scared that it's going to get intercepted, pass it. Pass it, obviously when someone's available, don't just throw it into midair. So those are my top 10 tips and tricks for improving your game at Quidditch Champions. I found these things to really help me, and these are things that I keep in mind when playing. You know, obviously they're not all absolutely game changing, but they're just little things that can just iron out some issues that you might be encountering and allow you to practice, get better at each role, and then hopefully you'll be an amazing player that everyone's like, oh my god, how did they get that good? And like, I'm really enjoying Quidditch Champions as well. It is difficult, but I actually like that about the game, because if it was too easy, it could get quite boring quite quickly and you might not want to replay it. I think the difficulty helps give it replayability and makes you want to be... It's frustrating. It's at the number of times I've screamed. I've been streaming it on Twitch, the number of times I've absolutely screamed because it's been hard. Then the joy when I do something right. But that, I think, shows that a game's good if it can get you that invested. Some people might find it too difficult and not like it, and that's absolutely fine, but I would definitely recommend giving it a try. I'm going to do a whole video giving my initial review on the game, so make sure that you are subscribed and put notifications on so you don't miss that. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you found this video useful. Let me know in the comments if you have any tips and tricks that have helped you with Quidditch Champions. If you enjoyed the video, I'd be so grateful if you'd give it a big thumbs up. It would mean the world to me, and if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and put notifications on so you don't miss future videos. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.